Okay, so this video, just trying to make this as short as I can. This is relating to a conversation that Mufti Abu Layth had with Dr. Abdul Majid. And the thing about it is, I've hardly heard anyone talk about this, whether Christian or Muslim. And it could be because they don't realize that, obviously there are Muslims around who actually want to be more truthful than what you hear people are like at Speaker's Corner. And the thing is, this was an interesting conversation because what essentially happened is the Mufti came out with a video called Bukhari Gate, trying to say how Bukhari was messed up because he didn't like certain things which are in it. And so the thing that's really good about this conversation is that what Dr. Abdul Majid was trying to do was to show that Mufti was making a mistake, because you can also find those same problems with the Quran as well. And so if what he was challenging, the challenge he was laying to Mufti is that if he's trying to destroy Bukhari, then Abdul Majid is going to expose how the Quran can be destroyed the same way. So what he's essentially saying is that Mufti should lay off Bukhari, Sahih al-Bukhari, and then Majid will lay off the Quran. That's essentially what Dr. Majid wanted to have happen. But what you really have to do is actually listen to the conversation yourself. And the way you can find it is that if you go to Mufti Abu Layth's page, and you'll find it's a bit different now. Obviously, actually, you find out the reason why. So if you go to the search, and I've already typed it in there, and just type Abdul Majid, and then when you click on so when it does the search, it should be the top one. And the way you know it's the right one is because the length of it will be 5 hours and 50 minutes. And yes, I know 5 hours and 50 minutes is a long time to have to listen to them talk. Right, yeah, what I was just going to say is that if you go to 3 hours and 44 minutes, 51 seconds, then essentially watch it from there to the end. And this is like the best part where Abdul Majid really goes into the Mufti and he's really hammering him. And so if you don't want to watch the whole 5 hours, you can do that. But obviously the whole 5 hours and 50 minutes, you'll be able to see the way that he's trying to attack what Mufti's trying to do. So essentially it's this first one. And of course the next one is of course what happened to him with these some guys who, well, it seems to be Muslim guys, went and smashed up his house because he was he was being too sensible, I suppose you could say. So let's get on with it. So in this first one, if you listen carefully to what Abdul Majid is saying, he's going to be saying some things about the Quran, if I remember correctly. So if you just listen to this.
Yeah, what does that mean? Actually, they are saying that jab tak hadith, when the hadith is outside our custody, our control, then it is a hadith of Rasulullah. But when it comes to us, then we change it the way we want it. So this is, they also have done the same rules with the Quranic verses as
yes,
well.
But you have
manuscript.
So notice what's happening. He's trying to say, he's essentially saying the way they changed Bukhari, that's what I was trying to tell you. The way that he's saying they've changed Bukhari is the same thing that they do with the Quran as well. And remember, this is a high-level Muslim scholar. As you can see, he's an imam at some Luton mosque. So this guy isn't a joker, and you can obviously see all the books behind him as well.
Yeah, there are so many manuscripts in India, which recently I was, doing research on. To respect our Sheikh Abdul Muhammad Akram Nadwi, he is also from the same, school of thought. But these people, some of this, Deobandi scholars and subhanallah, the Nadwi scholars, they have even altered, they tried to even alter the verses of the Quran.
You heard what he just said there. He said they tried to alter the verses of the Quran. And this is like a high-level Muslim scholar who's saying this. So these scholars, they know this. Obviously, the Dawah people probably know some of this as well. But they're not going to say it. Now, I just wanted to comment this. You see, what he just said there is actually against Sharia law. Because apparently in Sharia law, a Muslim is not allowed to say any truth which can cause doubt in the mind of a Muslim. So what he's actually just said there, he's not actually allowed to say that according to Sharia law, from what I've heard anyway.
That when they used to publish the
that's a beautiful point right there, Dr. Saab, because we'll come to a bit of that where people have also altered hadith. But you see the Quran, the difference.
You know, is how Mufti said that people have altered hadith, and these are both Muslim scholars, and they're happy to say this kind of stuff, but you're not going to hear anyone down at Speaker's Corner say anything like this.
This is why I'm saying that the way they reach us, if I alter, let's say I pick up a verse of the Quran and I have a publishing house and I alter something, even if it's by mistake, because every Muslim child out there is learning the Quran anyway, my thing doesn't hold much power. But when you do it with hadith, yes, it might not work, but if some powerful people did it by accident, it would work because they were the main disseminators. They were these musnids, these people who push things out. And you'll see, for example, we'll come to that, like people like, let's say, one of the major musnids that you see, coming to Ibn Hajar as well, but is, Abu Ali as-Sadafi. And he's a major person, and we'll speak a bit about him, but he kind of disseminates all this. Bukhari comes through him. But they used to say about him that he was terrible. His handwriting, kana sayyi al-khat. And his handwriting was terrible. And from him, bin Sa'ad.
Ghassani's handwriting was good.
Ghassani is before him, but you're right, yeah. Ghassani slightly before him. But, I mean, they overlap, but he's seen it.
I was just going to say, they're discussing the people who actually wrote down manuscripts of Bukhari. And what Mufti is trying to say is that the Bukhari manuscripts came through these individual people. So because of that, they could have actually changed whatever they want. And it's interesting that they're saying that because, you know, something recent has come up saying that to do with the images that the mausoleums that used to be in Mecca that have been destroyed in like the 20th century by the Wahhabis. And apparently now some, some hadiths have appeared saying that you shouldn't have anything to do with graves. And so it could actually be that these people that Mufti is talking about, and then Abdul Majid said about the person before him, they could have been the ones who actually put these prohibitions on sort of praying towards graves. You never know.
Too. You praised his handwriting because you quoted that.
Yes.
Jameel.
Yes. Now the thing is that bin Sa'ada, who's taking from Sadafi, in fact, he's also his father-in-law. He's taking from him. He takes the manuscripts away and he changes. He changes so much and adds and varies that his version becomes the relied upon one, and it still is in Morocco. They rely upon the bin Sa'ada manuscript. So my point is that, look, you have to accept that the way the Quran has reached Muslims, there is no book in Islam that has reached us in that capacity, not even close. The other books have reached us through isolated people, through one person to one person. Let's say today, all the versions of Bukhari that we have today, for the most part, are based on the Nuskha Sultaniya. Right? So they are the Sultan Abdul Hamid II.
And what he's talking about there are the different manuscripts of Bukhari. And of course, this is something you will never hear normally scholars would mention. The fact, because these manuscripts, they're not as old as you think they should be.
The caliph, he had in his time, ulama say, okay, let's group together and let's get a committee and let's get Bukhari published. So they work on certain things. They get a manuscript from Unini, and we'll come to him. They don't have his, but they have a secondary copy. They have some other copies. They put them together. Some people say they had Ahmad bin Shakir's copy. They print this first standardized version recently in the 20th century which is called the Nuskha Sultani, and is printed by Al-Matba' Al-Amiriya. Now, even this, when it undergoes They give it to a committee of a council in Al-Azhar of 15 ulama to edit it, and they take out over 100 mistakes and then print it again, known as the the Dar Bulaq Tab'a. Now, this is the one that everybody has then copied.
He's talking about this is how they've come with the current collection of Sahih al-Bukhari. And notice he's saying there that they've edited things in it as well. So you've got no idea what has been edited. And of course, the Muslims, they're not going to tell you. Maybe you can get hold of the originals, but of course, those originals are in Arabic fully. So you somehow have to get into wherever they are and get an Arab to read them all out for you or translate them all for you.
So I'm asked even recently, so if all our copies of Bukhari go back to, in recent times, go back to just Sultan Abdul Hamid's manuscript, which is still available today. We're just starting. We haven't got to the other problems before where he gets his copies from. How can we be so certain about this? About Bukhari being 100% confident in everything that's inside it.
Okay, so that's the first one ending. Alright, so now this one is a little bit shorter.
Dr. Saab, that isn't the reason. The reason for Bukhari, Kate, is things like this.
Oh, it's actually longer, but don't worry, it shouldn't take too long.
The Prophet saying, I had forgotten verses of the Quran, so-and-so taught me. This is the reason. Okay,
you want to discuss that as well?
Of course,
please. No problem with
please.
Because see, okay, you mean to say that...
Well, actually, this part is actually good because here's where he does a proper attack on the Quran. So listen carefully to what he's saying.
Prophets cannot forget things?
So it is impossible for the Prophet to forget the Quran as a prophet.
Because then what does Allah say in the Quran? Okay. ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها. What does this mean? Now you translate, please.
Allah, I'll explain. Because can you explain what the verses before it and after it are talking about?
I'm talking about this particular verse.
No, because I'll explain. Absolutely. I'll explain. Right, I'll explain it. The verses before it and after it are speaking, these verses are speaking about Bani Israel and about Moses. This is Surah Baqarah, and this is speaking.
Musa is not a Rasul?
He is. So, وَمَا نَنْسَخْ مِنْ آيَةٍ. So we have revealed verses before you to other prophets. We have abrogated them. And we have allowed prior revelation to be forgotten. So this is talking about previous revelation. The Quran now supersedes.
Yes. No. Quran, this ayah. No.
Dr. Saab,
this is a problem for us.
You weren't expecting that one.
When we want to understand this ayat, we are always, like to play around with it. This ayah gives a doctrine, a rule in Islam that once Allah has brought one rule, Allah can bring the mansukh and nasikh. So this is what Allah is referring to. One of the principles in Islam, certain things are allowed, and then later on it becomes mansukh, and then the nasikh rule will come. So this is an abrogation. And Allah is proving here that it is possible. And in Surah Al-Isra, didn't Allah say to Rasulullah, if we want to take the Quran from your heart, we can take it away? You know the ayah. You have his Quran, mashallah.
You see, the question is this, Dr. Saab.
No, tell me. Didn't Allah say directly to Rasulullah?
Right, so we don't believe in Islam. I'm not saying if Allah wants, He could destroy everything. If Allah wants, the Quran, Islam could disappear. If Allah wants, obviously, if Allah wants, He could do anything. We're not questioning Allah's power. We're talking about prophethood. Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, in his tafsir, highlights that this hadith is, the reason this hadith is absurd and blasphemous is because if you're saying the Prophet in that moment, because the Prophet says, oh, wow, thank God He reminded me, I completely forgot those ayahs belong to that surah. If the Prophet in that moment was to have been asked about those verses, he would not have known them. Which would have then meant the prophethood was...
Did he add them again in the Quran?
Yeah, but no, obviously this whole story is stupid and nonsensical. It wasn't true. But the point is, in this story...
No. If that is the case, then this hadith should not be actually matter to be discussed. Because if Prophet was reading something from there, and then he said, okay, this I heard from him. He was in his room, Aisha's room, radiallahu ta'ala anha, and he heard somebody saying from the masjid. And then he said that, okay. And if you see the chapter makes it very clear that this is possible. That's it. There were verses which were read, and then later on, the ruling has been taken away. And if you read any tafsir, any muqaddmah of the tafsir al-Quran, any usul al-tafsir, you will find they will say that there are 4 categories of the ayat of the Quran with its regards to the ruling and its reading. And one of them is that it is nasikh and it is recited. One is mansukh and it is still recited. The ruling is mansukh and it is still recited. And they give the example of 3 stages of the alcohol. Khamar.
And
the third thing they say that there are verses which has been taken, the rules has been taken away, and also the ayat also taken away.
Huh? Dr. Saab,
no. This is known.
So no, the reason Mufti responded that way because you heard what Dr. Abdul Majid said. He said about the ayah taken away. So he's essentially saying that ayahs can be taken away from the Quran.
What's the 4th one?
The 4th one is that it's still that there is reading and ruling, both are existing. And the mansukhis can be also like, this one, the ayat which are like the ayat of Khamar. This ayat of Khamar and ayat La taqrabu salata wa antum sukara hatta ta'lamun.
Those are fine.
All these ayats are not confirming that the alcohol is,
the other categories, the other one, the final one with they've disappeared. वो क्या है? वो उसमें क्या होता है?
Ruling is gone and reading is gone.
Acha, and what's the last one where the reading is gone but the ruling is here?
What do you mean by that?
Rajam.
Ayat of Rajam is there. The ruling is there.
But the
ayat is not there. Yes.
So let me get this right, Dr. Saab. Where have the ayats gone?
Now, this is a classic question, and I had this conversation with a couple of Muslims, and now we're going to have some proper scholars actually give an answer to this question that the people at Speaker's Corner couldn't give.
With Allah, this is a simple thing.
अच्छा, भूल गए लोग.
No, भूले नहीं है, अल्लाह ने खुद ने मिटा दिया उसको भूलने की जरूरत नहीं.
But then Allah kept the.
All right, so that's the end of that part, because what they do is they sometimes do ramble on a bit. But what I'd advise is if anyone feels like it, they can watch the whole 5 hours and 50 minutes to see the battle between them. Because those 2 parts are just the most 2 interesting parts I found. But like I say, if you go to 3 hours 46, and that last part, there is quite a bit of a battle between them. And you might not understand what they're saying, but you can tell that it's essentially Dr. Majid, he's trying to defend Bukhari, and of course, against Mufti's attack on it. And Mufti has to now defend the Quran against Dr. Abdul's attack on it because of what he did to Bukhari. Israelites will return to take down Islam.